Some insults don't just hurt, they change what you tolerate. On New Year's Eve, my phone lit up like a threat. I was sitting alone in my car outside a quiet diner near Street Paul, watching snowdrift under a street lamp. The parking lot was almost empty, but my hands were sweating like I was about to walk into a fight. I didn't want to answer. I already knew what I'd hear. Still, I picked up. "Where the hell have you been, old man?" Eric screamed the second the call connected. No hello, no concern, not even my name. Just rage, like I was a broken appliance he'd paid for. "I needed a minute," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "A minute? My friends are here. The food isn't done. The champagne's warm. You're embarrassing me." His words cracked through the speaker like a whip. "Get back here now." Back here. Not home. Back here, like I belonged to him. I stared at the steering wheel, thinking of how this house was mine. I bought it in 1992 with my wife, Claire. We raised our daughter Madison there. We fixed the roof ourselves one summer. We planted lilacs out front because Claire loved how they smelled in May. And yet Eric spoke like he owned me and everything I'd built. "Eric," I said quietly, "I'm not your staff." He laughed. "You live in my house, Daniel. You contribute. That's the deal. My house, my life, my dignity, all reduced to a deal." That was the moment I realized something terrifying. I'd been bending so long I forgot what standing up felt like. Grief doesn't just empty a home, it leaves the door unlocked for the wrong people. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 69 years old, retired, and 2 years ago I buried my wife. Claire was the kind of woman who could stop cruelty with one look. She had a soft voice and a spine made of steel. When she was alive, nobody dared disrespect me in my own home because Claire wouldn't allow it. Cancer changed everything. It didn't just take her body. It took our routines, our laughter, the easy way we moved through life as a team. After the funeral, the house felt too big. The silence was so thick it made my ears ring. I tried to fill it with habits: coffee at 6, the news at 5, lawn work on Saturdays, but habits don't hug you back. That's when Madison started visiting more. My little girl grown now, a teacher with tired eyes and a sweet heart that still wanted to believe people meant well. Her husband Eric came with her, always polished, always talking, always helping. "Dad, we just need a place for a few months," Madison said. "Eric's between jobs. We'll save, get our own place, and we'll be out before you know it." I said yes too quickly. I wanted footsteps upstairs again. I wanted someone to ask how my day went. I wanted family. At first, Eric was polite. Too polite. The kind of polite that feels rehearsed. Then the comments started small, sharp little jokes. "Daniel, you still do your own laundry? That's adorable. Man, you're stuck in your ways." I laughed along because that's what lonely men do. They laugh so they won't cry. And I didn't realize that every joke was a test, seeing how much disrespect I'd swallow. Control doesn't arrive with a warning, it arrives as help. Within months, my home stopped feeling like mine. Eric didn't ask before changing things. He rearranged my kitchen for efficiency. He replaced my living room lamp with something sleek and cold. He moved Claire's picture off the mantel because it made the place depressing. I found her photo later, face down in a drawer, behind a stack of Eric's mail. When I confronted him, he smiled like I was being silly. "Come on, Daniel. We're trying to move forward. You can't live in the past forever. Move forward." That was Eric's favorite phrase. It sounded healthy until you realized what it really meant. Stop making me uncomfortable with your grief. Stop reminding me this was your life before I entered it. Then the chores shifted. The errands. The expectations. Slowly, quietly, I became the one who cooked every meal and cleaned every mess. "Daniel, can you run to the store? Daniel, can you fold laundry? Daniel, can you make dinner?" I had a stressful day. He didn't say please. He didn't say thank you. He said it like the universe owed him my labor. Madison saw pieces of it, I think. But she was exhausted from work, and Eric was excellent at rewriting reality. "He likes staying busy," Eric told her. "He's old-fashioned. He forgets things. Don't take him seriously." And Madison, my own daughter, started nodding, like those sentences made sense. That's what broke me the most. Not Eric's arrogance, but the way Madison slowly began to look at me like I was a problem to manage instead of a father to protect. The first time you lose your voice, it feels temporary, until silence becomes your personality. I tried to push back once. Just once. In early December, I called my friend Frank Holloway, my best friend since high school. Claire and I used to host card nights with Frank and his wife Nora. It wasn't wild. It wasn't loud. It was comfort. It was history. "Frank," I said, "you and Nora want to come over Friday? Just for cards?" Before Frank could answer, Eric walked into the room like he'd been summoned by the word joy. "Card night?" Eric repeated, eyebrows lifting. "This house isn't a retirement center, Daniel." I felt my face burn. "Frank's my friend." Eric shrugged. "Go meet him somewhere else. We've got plans." Plans. In my house. Without my consent. Later, I tried to mention it to Madison. She glanced down the hallway, nervous. "Dad, maybe not," she whispered. "Eric's under pressure." That word pressure became the excuse for everything. Eric's pressure mattered. My dignity didn't. So I stopped inviting friends. I stopped talking about how lonely I felt. I stopped mentioning Claire because Eric's face tightened whenever her name came up. I stopped being a full person in my own home. And the scary part? I started believing this was normal. That this was the price of keeping Madison close. That if I endured long enough, things would improve. But abuse doesn't improve. It tightens. It gets comfortable. By Christmas week, Eric had trained me so well that when he handed me a long grocery list, I didn't even argue. I just reached for my coat, like a man clocking in. Sometimes the moment that saves you is the moment someone proves they don't care if you live. Christmas Eve was chaos. Eric announced we were hosting 12 people. 12. His parents, siblings, spouses, kids, an entire parade of opinions and entitlement. 5 o'clock, he said. And I need it perfect. Then he handed me a list longer than my forearm. Turkey, ham, sides, wine, desserts, wrapping paper, extra chairs, decorations, and gifts for his family because it looked cheap if we didn't. I stared at the total at checkout. $492 and change. I paid with my pension card, swallowing panic. Driving home, the snow was coming down hard. At a big intersection, my light turned yellow. I slowed. That's when a black SUV blasted through the red light and slammed into my driver's side. The impact sounded like the world breaking. My head hit the window. My chest crushed against the seatbelt. Glass scattered. My groceries exploded across the floor. When everything stopped moving, I lifted my hand to my forehead and saw blood. A woman ran up yelling she'd called 911. Paramedics arrived fast. A police officer asked questions. The medic kept saying, "Sir, you need the ER." And then my phone rang. "Eric." I answered because some foolish piece of me still believed family meant care. "Where are you, you useless old man?" he shouted. "My family's been here 40 minutes. Where's the wine? Where are the pies?" "I've been in an accident," I whispered. "I'm bleeding," he scoffed. "Stop being dramatic. Get back here now, or don't bother coming back." He hung up. Right there on the curb, with blood drying on my face, I felt something inside me snap clean in half. The part of me that still hoped he would treat me like human. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? When you finally say, "I'm not going back," it feels like jumping without knowing if there's ground. The paramedic insisted I go to the hospital. I should have. My head throbbed like a drum. My ribs felt bruised. But the deeper pain wasn't physical. It was the sudden clarity that my home wasn't safe for my spirit. "I'm not going home," I told them. The medic blinked. "Sir, I'm not going," I repeated, voice steadier than I felt. The police officer, Officer Rivera, studied me. "Do you have somewhere safe?" Safe. That word landed like a truth I'd been avoiding. Safe wasn't my living room anymore. Safe wasn't my kitchen. Safe wasn't my own bed. "Yes," I said. "A friend?" Rivera handed me his card. "If you feel worse, go to the ER. And, if someone is mistreating you, you can tell us." I nodded, unable to speak. My car was damaged, but it could move. I drove slowly, wincing with every bump, toward Frank Holloway's house. The neighborhood was quiet, warm porch lights glowing, the kind of place where welcome still meant something. When Frank opened the door and saw my bandage and the blood-stained collar of my coat, his face changed instantly. "Danny," he said, voice rough. What the hell happened? I tried to answer and my throat locked up. Shame and grief and anger all tangled together. I got hit, I managed. And I don't think I can go home. Nora appeared behind him with a hand to her mouth. Frank stepped aside without hesitation. Then you're not going, he said. Come in. And for the first time in a year, I walked into a house where I didn't feel like a burden. Real love doesn't ask what you can do, it asks if you're okay. Nora cleaned my wound like she'd done it 100 times, gentle and firm. Frank sat across from me, eyes hard, waiting for the part of the story I hadn't said out loud. This isn't just about the crash, he said quietly. Talk. So I did. I told them about the chores, the demands, the money Eric pressured me to hand over, the way he talked to me like I was disposable. I told them about Madison's silence, how she watched and didn't defend me. I told them about the phone call, the word useless, the way Eric cared more about wine than my blood. Nora's hands froze mid-rap. Frank's jaw tightened. That's abuse, Frank said. I shook my head automatically, like the word was too big. He's my son-in-law, and he's abusing you, Frank replied. Elder abuse, financial, verbal, isolation. It's textbook. Textbook. Like my suffering was a category. Nora sat beside me and took my hand. It doesn't get better on its own, Danny. Frank stood and started pacing, controlled fury in every step. My daughter Allison is an attorney. She deals with housing and protective law. She'll help you. Tomorrow. Tomorrow sounded impossible. Like a different planet. I don't want to lose Madison, I whispered. Frank stopped pacing and looked at me with something like heartbreak. Danny, you might already be losing her, and that's why you have to act. Because Eric is taking everything you built, your house, your peace, your relationship with your daughter. My stomach churned, but beneath the fear, something else sparked. Hope. Small, stubborn, alive. The first time someone offers you options, you realize how long you've been trapped. Allison arrived on Christmas afternoon, still dressed nicely even though it was a holiday. She took one look at my bandage, and her expression softened. I'm sorry, she said. Then she opened a notebook and got straight to the point. Who owns the house? I do, I said. My name's on the deed. Claire and I bought it. After she passed, it transferred fully to me. Allison nodded. Is Eric on any paperwork? Deed? Mortgage? Lease? No. Do they pay rent? I hesitated. Shame made my ears burn. Eric told me to pay him $200 a month. Said it was my contribution. Allison blinked slowly. So you've been paying your son-in-law to live in your own home. Frank muttered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer and a curse combined. Allison exhaled carefully. Okay, here's the truth. Legally, they're occupants without a lease. That means you can serve a notice to vacate. If they refuse, we file eviction properly. We do it clean, by the book, with law enforcement present. My hands trembled. That sounds extreme. Allison's tone softened. Extreme is a man screaming at you while you're bleeding. Extreme is you being isolated in your own home. You deserve safety, Mr. Mercer. Safety. Again. I stared down at my hands, hands that built my life. I imagined them signing papers to take it back. What about Madison? I asked. Allison didn't lie. Madison may be angry at first, but one day she'll see the truth. And even if she doesn't, your life still matters. That sentence hit me like sunlight after months of winter. My life still matters. Boundaries feel cruel when you're used to being used. Over the next few days, Allison gathered documents. The deed, bank statements showing my transfers, a copy of the police report from the hit and run. She explained everything in plain language, like she was building a bridge for me to walk across. We'll serve the notice on January 1st, she said. New year, clean start. I kept thinking of Madison as a child, her soft cheeks, the way she used to run into my arms like nothing in the world could hurt her if I held her tight. Now she was married to the thing hurting us both. On December 28th, Madison finally called. Not to ask if I was okay, just to ask where I'd been. Dad, where are you? Eric said you disappeared. I was hit by a car, I said. A pause. What? I told Eric. I told him I was bleeding. Her voice shook for half a second. Are you okay? Now you ask, I said, unable to hide the hurt. Her tone snapped defensive. Eric said you were exaggerating. He said you wanted attention. Attention. Like blood was a performance. I had a concussion, Maddie. Bruised ribs. Paramedics wanted me in the ER. Silence. Then she exhaled sharply and said the sentence that made something die in me. Okay. Well, when are you coming home? It's awkward without you. People keep asking questions. Awkward. Not worried. Awkward. I swallowed hard. Do you miss me? Or do you miss the cook? Dad, she snapped. That's mean. Is it untrue? I asked softly. She didn't answer, and her silence was answer enough. Gaslighting works best when it wears the face of someone you love. Madison's voice shifted into something colder, something Eric had taught her. Dad, Eric says you've been confused lately, she said. Maybe you should see a doctor for your memory. There it was. The weapon. If I protested, I wasn't hurt, I was senile. My memory is fine, I said calmly. I remember everything, Maddie. I remember being told I'm useless. I remember being ordered around. I remember paying him money in my own house. Her breathing sped up. You're being dramatic. No, I said quietly. I'm being awake. I could hear movement in the background, like she was walking away from somewhere private, like Eric was nearby. I imagined him hovering, listening, ready to rewrite my words. It's my house, I said, making myself speak slowly. The deed is in my name. The silence that followed was heavy enough to break bones. What? She whispered. You and Eric are guests, I said. Her voice turned small. I have to go. Eric needs me. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone until Frank gently took it from my hand and set it on the table. He's got her twisted, Frank said. I know, I whispered. But she's going to see it. She has to. Because if she didn't, I wasn't sure what would be left of us. That night, I wrote Madison a letter. Not a lecture, not an attack, just truth. I love you, but love isn't supposed to make someone invisible. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing it to survive. I folded it and slid it into my coat pocket like a lifeline. Sometimes the scariest step is showing up where you were once powerless. On New Year's Eve, I didn't celebrate. I sat quietly at Frank's house, listening to distant fireworks like they belonged to someone else's life. I watched the clock. I thought about Claire. I thought about Madison. I thought about Eric's voice. At 11:58 p.m., he called. That's when I ended up in my car outside the diner, needing space to breathe, needing to feel like I was making my own decision for once. Eric screamed again, demanding I return. You don't show up right now, he snapped, and you won't have a home to come back to. I surprised myself by laughing not from joy, but from disbelief. The audacity. I do have a home, I said, and tomorrow I'm taking it back. He scoffed. Sure you are. Then he hung up. Midnight came and went. Strangers hugged on TV screens. Champagne popped somewhere, and I sat alone in my car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in my world. But under the fear, I felt something new. Resolve. Because Eric was right about one thing, tomorrow was going to change everything. I drove back to Frank's house and slept in the guest room, wearing my anxiety like a second skin. I didn't dream. I just waited. When morning came, I put on the gray suit I wore to Claire's funeral. It felt like armor woven from grief and love. Frank looked at me and nodded once. Ready? I swallowed. I'm ready, even if my hands shook the whole way there. The law is quiet, but it's louder than a bully when it's on your side. January 1st, 9 a.m. Allison met us outside my house. Officer Daniels stood near his patrol car, calm and observant. Just his presence made my heart beat differently, like my body finally believed I wasn't alone. Allison opened her folder and reviewed the plan one last time. We stay calm. We say as little as necessary. We serve the notice. We document everything. My home looked the same from the outside porch, steps, winter wreath, but I felt like I was approaching a place that had become Chuja foreign. I stepped up first and knocked 3 times. Footsteps. A pause. Then the door opened. Madison stood there in sweatpants, hair messy, eyes puffy like she'd been crying or not sleeping. When she saw me, her face flickered with something that almost looked like relief, then confusion, when she noticed Allison and Officer Daniels. Dad, she whispered. What's going on? I need to come in, I said softly. We need to talk. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The smell inside hit me first: stale alcohol, leftover food, something sour. The living room was messy. Confetti stuck to the carpet, empty bottles on the counter. It looked like my home had been used, not cared for. Then I looked at the mantel, and my stomach dropped. Claire's photo was gone. In its place was a framed picture of Eric's parents. My knees went weak. Not from age, from betrayal. From upstairs, Eric's voice boomed. "Who is it?" Heavy footsteps. He appeared on the landing, then saw Allison and the officer, and his face turned white. Bullies are confident until the room fills with witnesses. Eric came down the stairs slowly, trying to look relaxed, but his eyes kept flicking to Officer Daniels like he was measuring risk. "Well, well," he said, forcing a smirk. The old man finally crawled back. Madison flinched. Just a tiny movement, but I saw it. Eric looked at me like I was beneath him. "Did you at least bring the stuff you were supposed to get, or did you forget again?" I didn't answer. I didn't give him the satisfaction. Allison stepped forward. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm Allison Holloway, attorney for Mr. Mercer. You are being served." Eric blinked, then laughed too loudly. "Served? For what? This is family." Officer Daniels shifted half a step closer, not threatening, just present. Eric's laugh caught in his throat. Allison placed the documents on the coffee table. "This house belongs solely to Daniel Mercer. You have no legal claim. You are required to vacate." Eric's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. Madison, tell them." Madison stared at the papers, hands shaking. I took a breath and said the words I'd been holding for months. "Eric, on Christmas Eve I was hit by a car. A hit and run. I was bleeding on the sidewalk. I called you." Madison's hand flew to her mouth. "Dad!" Eric cut in fast. "He's exaggerating." "I told you I was hurt," I continued, voice steady. "And you called me useless. You demanded wine and pies. You hung up on me." The room went silent, the kind of silence that exposes everything. Madison looked at Eric like she was seeing him for the first time. And Eric looked at me like he couldn't believe I'd finally spoken. Truth doesn't just expose the abuser, it forces everyone else to choose a side. Madison picked up the notice and read it twice, lips trembling. "Dad, you're evicting us?" she whispered. "I'm evicting Eric," I said gently. "You're my daughter. You can stay if you want, but I won't be treated like a servant in my own home anymore." Eric stepped closer to her, voice smoothing into manipulation. "Babe, he's confused. He's old. He's emotional because he got in a little accident. We can handle this." Madison's eyes turned to me. "You were really bleeding?" I nodded. "And you called him?" I nodded again. Madison turned back to Eric, and her voice came out cracked. "Why did you tell me he was exaggerating?" Eric scoffed. "Because he was. He's always dramatic." Madison's face changed, hurt turning into anger. "You yelled at my dad while he was hurt." Eric's jaw tightened. "Stop being emotional." Madison whispered, "Stop being cruel." Officer Daniels cleared his throat softly. "Mr. Caldwell, you are required to comply with the notice." Eric snapped his head toward the officer, then back to Madison like he was searching for control. "We're leaving," he announced. "Madison's coming with me." He grabbed her hand. "Come on." Madison pulled back. "No," she said. Eric froze. "What?" "I said no," Madison repeated, louder this time. "I'm not going with you." I watched Eric's face shift from rage to panic in real time. Because abusers don't fear feelings. They fear losing control. And Madison, my daughter, was slipping out of his grasp. The moment a victim says no, the abuser becomes desperate and dangerous. Eric's voice rose into a sharp, ugly edge. "You're choosing him? After everything I've done for you?" Madison's eyes filled with tears. "Everything you've done? You isolated me. You made me feel guilty for caring about my dad. You made me think love was obedience." Eric turned to me, spitting blame like venom. "You turned her against me. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. You did that yourself." Allison's tone stayed calm. "Mr. Caldwell, you have 24 hours to remove your belongings." Eric snapped. "I don't need 24 hours. He stormed upstairs, slamming drawers, yanking items from closets. The whole house shook with his tantrum. 15 minutes later, he came down with 2 duffel bags, eyes hard, face twisted with humiliation. At the door, he paused and looked back at Madison. "You'll regret this." Madison's voice was shaking but steady. "I already regret not protecting my dad." Eric's eyes flicked to me. Enjoy dying alone, Daniel. My throat tightened. Then I said, quietly, I'd rather be alone than owned. Eric left. The door closed behind him, and the house exhaled. Madison sank onto the couch, hands covering her face. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I pulled the letter from my coat pocket and placed it in her hands. Read this, I said softly, when you're ready. And before we continue, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Because if you've ever felt small in your own home, I want you to know you're not alone. Peace feels strange when chaos was your normal. After Allison and Officer Daniels left, the house felt different. Not perfect, just quiet. Quiet without tension. Quiet without footsteps that made me flinch. Madison stood near the mantel, staring at the empty space where her mother's photo belonged. Where is it? She whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't know. And that hurt in a way I couldn't explain. That night, Madison cried in her old bedroom. I heard it through the hallway, soft and broken. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to wrap her in forgiveness and pretend the last year didn't happen. But I also knew we couldn't heal by pretending. So I did the only thing I could. I stayed present. I made tea. I left a blanket outside her door. I didn't push. I didn't lecture. I let her grief do its work. In the morning, she came downstairs with red eyes and said, I read your letter 3 times. I nodded, scared to speak. She whispered, I didn't realize how much I let him change me. I swallowed hard. He changed both of us. Madison's voice shook. Can I stay here? For a while? I don't know who I am without him. I looked at my daughter, still my daughter, even with mistakes, then nodded. You can stay, but we do it differently, with honesty. She nodded. I want that. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we might rebuild. Not overnight, not easily, but truly. Healing isn't one big apology, it's 1,000 small choices to be better. The weeks that followed were messy. Madison jumped whenever her phone buzzed. Eric sent long texts, angry one moment, pathetic the next. You're ruining my life. Your dad manipulated you. Come home and we'll fix this. You'll regret humiliating me. Madison showed me the messages with trembling hands. What do I do? You don't answer, I said. You breathe. She started therapy in February. She came home from sessions drained, like she'd been carrying invisible bricks. Some nights she sat at the kitchen table and stared at nothing. One evening she said, He made me believe you were forgetful. I didn't flinch. I know. Tears fell. Why didn't you fight harder, Dad? The question stung, but it was fair. Because I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid you'd leave? Afraid I'd be alone. Madison covered her mouth. I'm so sorry. I reached across the table and took her hand. Don't waste the guilt, I said softly. Use it to protect yourself now. Slowly, we began eating dinner together again. No TV, no scrolling, just conversation. Awkward at first, then warmer. Madison started cooking, and we laughed at her burnt chicken and my oversalted soup. Laughter returned like a shy animal, testing if it was safe. One day, Frank came by with a small box. Inside was Claire's photo found shoved behind paperwork in a hallway cabinet. Madison held it like it was fragile glass. She placed it back on the mantel, then whispered, Hi, Mom. I stood beside her, eyes burning, and for the first time, my home felt like it remembered us. Freedom comes with paperwork, and heartbreak, and finally, air. In March, Madison filed for divorce. Eric didn't contest it the way he threatened he would. Bullies are loud when they think they'll win. When reality shows up, they often run. Madison cried the day she signed the papers, not because she missed Eric, but because she mourned the version of herself that believed love meant shrinking. I feel stupid, she whispered. You were manipulated, I said. There's a difference. She joined a support group for emotional abuse survivors. Hearing other women tell stories that sounded like hers made her shake with anger and relief. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't weak. She was conditioned. As for me, I still had nightmares sometimes, glass exploding, my car spinning, the curb cold beneath me. But the worst flashback wasn't the crash. It was Eric's voice. Useless, old man. Therapy helped me too. I didn't want to admit I needed it, but I did. My therapist asked, Why did you tolerate it? And I answered honestly, because I thought endurance was love. He leaned forward and said, "Endurance isn't love if it destroys you." That sentence became my new rule. By summer, Madison returned to teaching full time, standing taller, smiling more. The house slowly filled with normal things again, groceries that didn't feel like punishment, music playing while we cleaned, quiet evenings on the porch. One night, Madison said, "Dad, I'm proud of you." I looked at her, stunned. She swallowed. "You were brave when you didn't become cruel back. You just stopped accepting it." My throat tightened. "Your mom always said I was stronger than I believed." Madison nodded, tears shining. She was right. Some stories aren't meant to stay private because silence protects the wrong person. Frank was the first one who suggested I talk about what happened. "Danny," he said, "you know how many older folks are living like this and don't even have a name for it." So I spoke at a senior center one afternoon. 30 people in folding chairs, burnt coffee in a metal pot, a microphone that squealed if you stood too close. My hands shook when I started. I told them about Claire's death, about Madison moving in, about Eric's jokes that turned into control, about paying money in my own home, about the car accident and the phone call. When I finished, a woman raised her hand with tears in her eyes. "My daughter's boyfriend talks to me like that," she whispered. "He says I'm lucky they let me stay." 3 other people nodded. That's when I realized this wasn't rare. It was hidden. Allison helped create a simple guide, signs of elder abuse, steps to protect yourself, who to call. Madison helped hand them out. She wanted her mistake to become someone else's warning. After one talk, a man pulled me aside and said, "I thought I was the problem." I looked him in the eye and said the words Allison gave me. "You're not difficult. You're being mistreated." He started crying. Driving home that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Not the fake purpose Eric assigned me, real purpose. Claire used to say, "Pain doesn't have to be wasted." Maybe she was right. The day you stop begging for respect is the day your life begins again. Now, when New Year's Eve comes around, I don't hide in parking lots. I don't flinch at my phone. I sit on my porch with a warm drink, watching snow fall, and I breathe like a man who owns his own life again. Madison still lives with me for now, saving for her own place. This time it isn't someone moving in temporarily and taking over. This time it's honest, respectful, healing. Sometimes we talk about that Christmas Eve, the night I was bleeding on a curb while Eric screamed about champagne. Madison still breaks down sometimes, ashamed of her message. Eric is furious. "Just come home. I hate that version of me," she whispered once. I shook my head. "Don't hate her," I said. "Save her. She was trapped. Now she's free." And if you're listening and you feel that same trap, if someone makes you feel small in your own home, please hear me. It doesn't start with a punch. It starts with a comment, a demand, a joke that isn't really a joke. And one day you look up and realize you've disappeared. You don't have to disappear. Find your Frank, find your Allison, find your Officer Daniels. Help exists. And you are not dramatic for wanting safety. You are not difficult for wanting respect. You are human. If this story touched you, drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Because sometimes the simplest reminder that we're not alone is the first step toward taking our lives back.